Joining me today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Brian Sugiyama of the Seven Potato Society, also known as the Central Vancouver Island Japanese Canadian Society. Am I correct, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. This incredible group of people that I've been researching celebrate Japanese cultural heritage through many events that they provide for the community. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these points, within Nanaimo, and allowing families to enjoy wonderful Japanese food and experience some of their traditions. Am I on the right track with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, could you tell us a few things about what the Seven Potatoes Society does, and just a little background on your...
Historically, and I think you got some of the history that Fukawa wrote.
Yes.
But one of the things is that the group is a representative group of all Japanese Canadian immigrants, whether they have arrived in the last year or many years ago through their ancestors. So
yeah.
We have been in existence I guess it's been about 40 years here.
Okay.
And we not only do the social aspects, which certainly help to bond and create connections amongst families, but we also have been an advocate for the group and representative of this area, which includes everywhere from, I would think, this side of the Malahat all the way up to and including the Courtney Campbell River area.
Okay.
And there's a vast array of people who live, whether they be on Vancouver Island or some of the Gulf Islands, who have either remained here, but more often than not have just recently come back to the island because of some connection in their past.
Okay. Okay, thank you. How many people are involved in the Seven Potatoes?
I would think our membership is somewhere around, and it's very difficult, having gone through a couple of years of limited interaction because of COVID-19.
Right.
I would think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 100 families, and so that includes adults, children, older adults, etc. So
60 to 100. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So I wonder, are you okay to delve into the article that you sent me?
Sure.
Yeah. So from what I understand, again, correct me if I'm wrong. So through one of the key members of your society, Fukawa, wrote an amazing article, Lifting the Veil on Nanaimo's, and how do I pronounce that? Nikkei, thank you, community, from settlement to return. So when I read this, I was entirely shocked, not being aware of any of this that went on. So I just sort of wanted to turn it over to you and ask if you have any personal like family members or anyone who went through this experience.
Not particularly here, and
okay.
This is an interesting situation for me personally.
Yeah.
Is that my family was, was born in Edmonton.
Okay. Okay.
And just recently, well, not recently, it was in 1987, moved to Vancouver Island. So, but I have had interactions with a number of people that had been relocated through the process of actually invoking of the, at that time called the War Measures Act. Interesting enough, it was just invoked a couple days ago as called the Emergencies Act, where all the Japanese, I guess it was the Japanese descendants who lived in and worked on Vancouver Island, or actually the whole West Coast, were moved off of that 100-mile area along the Coast to further in, either in the interior of BC or to southern Alberta or whatever. So a number of those people were dispossessed of their property and moved on trains and underguard to various places throughout Canada, and that's sort of resulted in a spread of the immigration, immigrants from Japan originally, who many of which were born in Vancouver on the West Coast, to various places all over Canada.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I guess my main question is, why, just your insights on why at that time was this like able to happen? Like what, you know?
Well, and there's all sorts of articles on the internment and sort of the background to it, but I think a lot of it was to do with the undercurrent of racism and the government was run by mostly white people who had a distrust of either there was Asian communities, whether it be from those from China or those from Japan, and in particular the Japanese immigrants came with some funds and set up, and as you read in the article, a number of prominent businesses in not only Nanaimo but all over the West Coast, and were very successful. And I think that success begrudged a little bit of more displeasure amongst the white community.
Right.
And what happened was the outbreak of the Second World War brought about a feeling that they weren't to be trusted as far as infiltrating and recording and sending information about Canada and its defenses along the West Coast. So that's what really happened, and it's interesting because the same sentiment existed along the entire West Coast of North America and into the United States, but the treatment was a little different.
Yeah.
So if you look at, and they just had celebrated the 80th anniversary of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, invoking their legislation to relocate the Japanese away from the West Coast of the United States. But what happened there was a slightly different thing. Although they were put in camps and taken away from the West Coast, I don't think, and if you look up more detail, and I stand to be corrected, that those immigrants were not dispossessed of their possessions and their property. And so that was a key, because many of the people in BC lost not only their property, their boats, their land, etc., and with never the chance of probably ever, and they didn't know at the time, of ever getting back to that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something we're going to explore a little further in the weeks to come. So that's really great. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything we can look for as far as the Seven Potatoes events or anything in the future?
There's the BC government had just set aside some money.
Oh, nice.
Because this provincial government was involved in this as much as the federal government.
Right.
And in, I guess it was about 1980, there was the federal government at the time under Prime Minister Mulroney issued an apology to the Japanese people in Canada and provided some financial reimbursement called redress for their incarceration and their movement and everything else. So everyone who was involved in that at that time received a payment of $21,000 per person.
Yeah, I didn't read that.
And though that's probably loaded in the article, but you can look under redress and find more information on that.
Yeah.
But that was that. But it was just recently, in the last, I guess it was the last 2 years, that the BC government finally acknowledged their involvement in it, and set aside, first of all, initially just $2 million towards a fund that's being administered through a Nikkei group, which is Nikkei being Japanese immigration group in Canada, is dispersing grants for people who survive or are survivors of internment.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
we received, the Seven Potatoes, a grant to do a project, two different projects. One to celebrate the 80 years of redress. I think 20. No, it's not 80 years of internment. Sorry, and many of those, just like World War II veterans, are getting very, very old. But we wanted to get them together, and we're going to try to do that this summer. And they're doing that in every community who got some of this money, Victoria included, to have a gathering and a meal and
Nice.
some discussion of people's circumstances a little bit, but more so just a social gathering of people who were survivors of that internment. Because those survivors have either usually come back to the coast, having been started on the coast,
Right.
and we're doing one in Nanaimo in something around June, July of this year.
Okay.
The other thing that we're doing, which is really exciting to us, is we're going around and having a storytelling exercise where we go and record video and audio with some of these survivors and their stories. And their stories
Oh, wow.
about people who have grew up in places like Pauldie, just west of Duncan, or in Chemainus, or in some places, some of the locations, not only Nanaimo, which you've got the story of, but there's there was a group of loggers who had running a logging operation north of Nanaimo in Fanny Bay, and so and there's communities and that existed where there are now large numbers of Japanese Canadians who are interned in cemeteries in places like Cumberland and Courtney and Campbell River, Tofino, Euclid, etc. So we're going to go around and try to get the stories personally, and they're very few and far between. There's probably only 50 to 60 of these people still around on Vancouver, in central Vancouver Island, and